Hello and welcome back to ADHD Support Talk Radio. ADHD Support Talk is sponsored by ADDClasses.com. Visit www.addclasses.com to sign up for free webinars today. Hello, welcome back. I'm your co-host, Lynne Edris, and I'm a productivity coach. I help professionals who struggle with procrastination, disorganization, and poor time management learn to tackle their to-do list and take control of their calendar so that they have more time, more energy, and even more money for what matters most to them. I'm a woman with ADHD myself, so I've been where so many of you are and come out the other side, so to speak. So I've gone from living in that constant state of chaos and underperformance that my clients know so well to living a life of much more success and fulfillment, and I know you can share the same success too. You can learn more about me and what I do, the programs and services I offer at www.coachingaddvantages.com. And when you sign up on my website or text the keyword HACK, that's HACK, to 444-999, I'll send you my 7 foolproof productivity hacks to help you add hours of free time to your weeks by investing just a few smart minutes each day. Well, I am so excited today because I have with me today Mr. David Giwerc. And in just a minute, David and I are going to talk about ADHD coaching and empowering ADHD clients to activate their brains and create sustainable momentum. David is very special to me as the founder of ADDCA, the ADD Coach Academy. He really helped get me started on this journey that I'm so passionate about with my coaching business, and he makes such a difference in the lives of people with ADHD all over the world every single day. But I'd like to have you introduce yourself, David. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, how best people can get in touch with you, and what we're going to talk about today.
Well, first of all, after that introduction, I don't need to say anything. That was just beautiful, Lynn, and it's so nice to see. I remember our days in training and how far you've come, but you've earned and created everything that you have manifested in this world, and I'm so happy to see it and hear it, and it just shows up in everything you do. So first of all, let me acknowledge that and let the listeners know that you didn't just have this handed to you. You worked very, very hard and smart, and you're a great coach. So it's an honor
David.
to be here.
That means the world to me.
You're very welcome. So my name is Dave Giwerc, and I am founder and president of the ADD Coach Academy, which is the only comprehensive ADHD coach training program in the world that is accredited by 2 of the major governing bodies. One is the life coaching body, the International Coach Federation, which certifies as an accredited organization, and we are an accredited organization, certifies life coaches all over the world. To give you an idea of how large they are, they have 25,000 members. It's a very large organization. And also a newer organization that was established just for the certification of ADHD coaches, and they're also an accrediting body. And so as an accrediting body, we have the ability to certify ADHD coaches because we have to go through a very stringent and rigid vetting system where they scrutinize all our materials, and it's a long process. It takes about 3 years. So we're very, very proud of that. I am also a Master Certified ADHD Coach with both PAAC, which is the Professional Association of ADD Coaches, and the ICF, where I'm a Master Certified Coach. I was also president of the Attention Deficit Disorder Association for 3 years, where we instituted National ADHD Awareness Day, where the United States Senate passed a unanimous resolution to have National ADHD Awareness Day, which has grown into National ADHD Awareness Month. And I'm one of the co-founders of PAAC. So those are a few things. I've also written a book called Permission to Proceed, and it's been around for a while, and it's been endorsed by a lot of people. People like it because it takes all that esoteric scientific language about ADHD and puts it in stories and language and practical applications that everyone can understand. So that's, a little bit about me. And today what we're going to talk about is something that's very dear to my heart. It's about empowering our clients and empowering our clients to be able to ignite their brains, and be able to sustain it, which is a real difficult challenge for people with ADHD. ADHD really is a challenge of momentum. It's a challenge of igniting the engine and keeping that momentum going. And we are seeking stimulation. We're seeking dopamine. to get our brains going. And one of the problems with seeking that stimulation is what people don't realize. We always refer to ADHD as a deficit of interest. And Nora Volkow, who did a 9-year study at the National Institute of Drug Addiction, clearly showed that ADHD was a challenge of the motivational machinery and an ability to stimulate our brains through finding interest. But what people don't understand is interest can also mean anything that stimulates the brain. So if you're interested in drugs, pornography, going 250 miles an hour in a car, illicit drugs, all these things that are very interesting and stimulating to the brain, interest also has to be matched with intention. And intention is your purpose. How do I want to be in the situations? What benefit will I bring into the world? Who am I? Things like that. And ADHD is as much of a challenge of attention as it is intention, and it is much of a challenge of self-awareness. So if you don't learn how to pay attention to what you're paying attention to in the moment, and what you're paying attention to is interesting, but that interesting thing is not with a positive purpose, you can really diminish all your possibilities for future growth, and you can put yourself in a deep, deep hole. And so one of the things that is so important for people with ADHD is to become more self-aware. After all, at the heart of coaching is a great relationship, helping our clients understand themselves and become more self-aware. And what is self-awareness? So if we talk about what self-awareness is, you can't learn to ignite and activate your brains. And activate is a term we use at ADDCA. It's an actual skill set. It's learning how to activate your clients' brains, developing systems that work the way their brains work. But what we found over many years is this role of emotion. Emotion is critical to the wiring of the ADHD brain. It's critical to motivation. And what's critical to all of that is something that I've been talking about for 20 years, and that's the power of the pause. The ability to put on the brakes in the moment and pause, stop right there and reflect on how is what I'm paying attention to serving my ability to move forward in life. So this is a skill that everyone can learn. How do we do that? And how do we learn how to activate the brain? Well, first of all, most people with ADHD have a huge tendency, a propensity to pay attention to negative thoughts. Human brain does that. We already have a negativity bias, but research by, for example, one of my good friends at the University of Pennsylvania, Russ Ramsey, has shown perfectionism is a pervasive dominant thought, and it's a distortion. It's an illusion that they create that everything has to be perfect. So if you don't learn how to pause to pay attention to what you're paying attention to, and the way you do that is by learning to pay attention to the signals in your body. So why clients with ADHD can't get activated is because they don't know, they're not aware of the negative emotions that they're subconsciously paying attention to, and those dominant, pervasive negative thoughts create negative neurochemicals like cortisol, which creates more stress and anxiety. Anxiety and ADHD go hand in hand. And so think about this. If you don't learn and if you don't work with a coach to learn how to pause and pay attention to the signals in your body and reflect and question, what is this I'm feeling in my stomach? And name it. That emotion, that thought will take over you. So when you pause and you pay attention to the signals in your body or wherever it is, the moment you name that emotion, you tame it. Name it and tame it. And by the way, this is a skill called emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is so integrated with emotional regulation, which is huge in executive function, and interestingly enough, is not part of the diagnostic statistical manual. And emotion plays a critical role in ADHD, and it has not been integrated into the philosophy, the management, and coaching of ADHD nearly as strongly as it needs to be. So to summarize, in order to activate the brain, we have to learn to pause and pay attention to the things that ignite and stimulate the dopamine neurotransmitters in our brain, but they have to be our choice, not something that's pushed down your throat that says, you need to go to college, you need to take this major, you need to do this, and it's an area of your weakness, not your strengths. And so we've developed a vernacular, a language, a perspective that puts a lot of pressure on people to go into arenas that they have not chosen themselves, and many times integrates their weaknesses, not their strengths. And weaknesses don't ignite the brain. Strengths do. And this all comes from one thing, the ability to pause and pay attention in the moment and ask, how is what I am paying attention to serving me right now, and challenge it. And so that's the first part, is activating. And sustaining it, you know, Lynn, I used to think that interest was enough, and it's not enough.
Yep.
It's not. So I like to call these the 4 I's. You know, there's interest, that'll activate the brain, that'll get it going. Then there's importance. You know, something you could be interested in, it can be really important. Taxes are not something that are interesting and important, so you can forget that. You need somebody to do that. But
right.
This is very interesting and important to me, what I'm doing today. So because it's interesting and important, I prepared. I knew Lynn is important to me. She's a good friend. She's a good coach. It's important to me. Now, if I'm lucky enough and I find that thing that's called inspiring, then it becomes internal. Now, for today, all 4 of those are inherent in me. So when I'm interested and it's important, I can get inspired, and inspired is what creates all the positive neurochemicals like oxytocin, which is the love chemical, the connection chemical, serotonin, which makes me happy. Like, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to this. And it becomes internal. So really the only preparation I have to do is to allow myself to be present, because this is second nature for me, just like it would be for you, Lynn. These are things we've been doing for many, many years. So when you ask me to come on the call, yes, I prepare. I prepare my thoughts in my head, and I have keywords, because it's all 4 of those things. So in order to really sustain long-term, my belief is you have to find the things that are inspiring and that use what I call your character strengths, not your performance strengths. You know, I can be a great writer, a great speaker, a great singer, but if I don't know the motivation or the source of motivation for doing those tasks, they will remain stagnant. I've seen this with my clients. I coached a lot of entrepreneurs who just couldn't move forward because they had talents, but they weren't inspired.
Right.
So those are the things that really, you know, activate the brain, pausing to pay attention to what's important to you, what's interesting, what's the use of your character. And, you know, character strengths is a whole big field, as you know, Lynn, I've gotten very involved in, and the Academy has. But what really creates sustainable momentum are, you know, you remember, Lynn, we used to do those exercise magical moments on the mountain.
Yep.
And we still do those, because the way our brain works is, in order to create the future, we have to be able to go into our memory and access those positive, inspirational memories that have been buried. And we have to excavate them. And it's interesting, because the same part of the brain that carries the past also gives us the ability for the future, and that's the hippocampus. So many of my clients over the years, when I ask them, you know, what is it that you did when you were at your best, where you were inspired? And you know, Lynn, so many of them draw a blank.
Yeah,
because
they can't remember because they've been so beat up with failure for so many years.
That's right. They've been so beaten up, and they are there. They are there, and when they come up, we as coaches break those down into pieces, and then we create prompts for them to remember, because they will forget as soon as we get it. So this coaching thing is about helping them excavate these things. And it sounds easy, but you and I know, Lynn, it's a process. It's a long process.
Absolutely.
Of empowering them to know that they are capable of doing something good. So 2 things that I'd like to say. Coaching is in that arena where we have a different language. We're about activating the brain, and we have a different language that's positive, that says this is what you can do. It doesn't mean we neglect the challenges and the impairments. It just means that's not the place to start. Right. And that's what generally people with ADHD do. They start from a place of impairment. And we're of the totally different philosophy, and we know it works. But they have to embrace it. They have to embrace it.
And that's not easy, right? It's not easy for a lot of new clients that come to work with an ADHD coach for the first time, because coaching is it's so much more than, I always tell, new clients, yes, we're going to do tips and tricks and strategies and all of that sort of practical stuff, but the bigger picture, what matters to you, why it matters to you, really getting deep down to the who you are stuff.
Yes.
We have to do that digging. We have to do that excavation, and we have to find ways to keep that in the forefront of your mind, or none of those tips, tricks, strategies, solutions, systems, tools are going to stick for the long haul.
That's absolutely right. I couldn't have said it better myself. And at the heart of coaching, sometimes people think I'm going on a limb when I say this, but what we as ADHD coaches do is we establish a very strong relationship. I would almost call it as like being a professional friend, because, a good friend will tell you the truth. A good friend will listen to you and, visually hug you if it's virtual and let you know that they deeply, deeply care about you and that we don't judge you. But as we're helping them understand themselves, we're also challenging and encouraging them to give themselves, as I wrote in my book, permission to proceed to who they actually are. And that's one of the things that I think is critical to the coaching relationship. Clients come to us discussing what they have to do, what goals they have to implement, what goals they have to complete. Goals are very boring. Intention is much more exciting. Intention is, how do I want to be in this moment? How do I want to convey myself? Who am I when I'm with my kids? What legacy do I want to leave? Those are all goals, but those are so much bigger, and they relate to who you are. And let me explain what I mean by the who. And we use a distinction. You're very aware of this, Lynn, and I've been talking about this since I was born, it seems like. And because if you don't get to this place, you and I both know a person with ADHD is going to stay stuck. And what we mean by this is so many of our clients, Lynn, you know this, you can look at your clients. I'll get a client that either went into a business or went into college or took a major because their parents said, this is what you have to do. This is a true story. I'll give you one example. I had a client who, very smart but very high anxiety, and one of the universities asked me to step in and coach him because he's very smart, but he was so anxious. And the reason he was anxious was because he was getting D's and F's in science and math, and he was getting straight A's in history and English. Now, it doesn't take a brain scientist to figure out he does not like science and math. But when we coached, he finally told me that the reason he was taking science and math was because his father said that he needed to because that's where the jobs were. And I did some character strengths with him and some coaching. And first of all, I told him, you are not your performance. Who you are is not what you do. Who you are is who you believe and know yourself to be. And he said, well, what do you mean? So we started talking, and I always have my clients do their character strengths because character strengths are psychometrically varied, very scientifically researched, and they're really your self-assessment of who you are. There are things like kindness and creativity and social intelligence. And two of his character strengths, and if you don't use at least two of them, your energy is diminished. Two of his were appreciation of beauty and excellence, creativity and kindness. So I was really interested to find out where this was leading. I asked him, what is it that you love so much about history and English? Because I wasn't going to pay attention to the math and science because that was immobilizing him. That's why they called me in, because he didn't want to go take his math test. And he said, and a very bright, articulate kid, that's why they didn't want him to fail out. He said to me, well, David, history to me is a report card of the evolution of mankind. And I said, wow, that's a pretty cool definition. And what about this piece of appreciation of beauty and excellence? He says, well, I got to be honest with you. I love history. And when I see a landmark getting torn down, it rips my heart out because I feel like you're disintegrating a piece of history. You're taking it off the face of the map, and it really bothers me. I said, well, I can understand that. So when you put these two things together, these landmarks represent the history and the evolution of mankind. And how does English fit into this? Well, I love to write about it. I love to articulate about it. It comes easy to me, and I'm very passionate about these things. So we started talking. I said, well, what do you plan to do for the summer with these interests in mind? Well, it's interesting that you say that, because after our last coaching session, we talked about doing something along that, and he got an internship with a fundraising organization that collects money to restore old landmarks. Now, how cool is that?
Cool. Yeah, that's very cool.
And then I had to bring his father in, because his father was putting such pressure on him, and very nicely, and many times when we coach families or kids, we have to bring the parents in, because the parents don't understand the ADHD. And interestingly enough, quite often the parent that gives the kid the ADHD is the one who's adamantly against it. Not always, but quite often. And this father came in and he said to me, I just can't understand why my son can't pass math and science. I mean, when I was in school, I would just sit there for 6 hours and get it done. And I just laughed. And he said, what's so funny? I said, because not everybody's got the same brain. All our brains are different. Let me tell you what ADHD is about. ADHD is a deficit of interest, and I went through the research with him and I explained it to him and said, this is validated scientific 9-year research study that proves that when a kid with ADHD is not engaged in those areas of passion and interest, his brain will shut down every time. Yeah. And the father got really silent, and he said, I never knew that. I said, well, you do now, and now that you know that, what do you think? And he said, well, how's my son going to get a job in history and English? Well, we don't know. We don't know where he would get it in math and science necessarily, but what we do know, he's got an internship this summer. Oh, he does? And then Mike began to tell him about, I'm just making up the name, Mike began to tell his father that this is what I'm going to do. And finally his father kept going on, and Michael, who's a very, very even-keeled kid, said, damn it, Dad, don't you understand? I've got a unique brain wiring, and my brain wiring works different than everybody else's. But when I find something that works for me and I do it in my own unique way, there's nothing I can't do. He ended up becoming a curator at a museum when he graduated.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And
that's really one of the beautiful things, right, is when you can help a client excavate that and really I call it internalize. I'm not sure. There are lots of other words for it, but really
No, that's the word I use. I was just using it before. Internalize. That's right.
They can advocate for themselves, right? They can explain to other people what they need, why they need it, how they work best, what's important to them. And it's so much easier to be successful when you can advocate for yourself and you really understand how your brain works, what you need, how you work best, all of that stuff, what's important to you, what your values are. And I know, David, just having known you for a long time and having it sort of, most of us adults with ADHD who aren't diagnosed until a little bit later in life have, somewhat similar stories. Yeah. But it's hard to advocate for yourself when you feel the blame and the shame and all of that stuff that I'm always harping about your ADHD, when you really don't understand why you struggle, when you're assigning character flaw to the things that you don't do well, or the things that you don't do well consistently or follow through on or whatever. But that really understanding who you are and why your brain works that way, I mean, it opens up the world.
Lynn, I believe that there's a bunch of things that we do differently than other coaches in other professions, but the one you just hit is foundational. It is the most important, that when you are able to educate a person about their brain wiring and say, listen, you've got trillions of ways you process your brain, trillions, and just because you don't do it the way the school says or the college says or the workplace says doesn't mean you're broken. It just means you have a different way. And so, processing modalities, all the things that we learn. Some kids need to rock in a rocking chair and read to themselves out loud. Some kids need to see visuals and are very intuitive and trust their gut. And these are things that are not integrated into the school system. Teaching kids that you have a different way of learning, let's figure out what that is and let you do it. This kid I was just talking about was a kinesthetic learner who used music. And so he would listen to the recordings, type them up, and then listened to him in music, and he got straight A's in history and English. But in math and science, he couldn't understand these abstract concepts. So why would you put him in something that's shutting his brain down? But he didn't understand. He thought he was broken. He thought he was a fraud, because how can I be good in one thing and so terrible in another? And that's the paradox of ADHD. But the reality of it, Lynn, nobody's good at everything.
Absolutely.
ADHD is a more intense version, and instead of what's wrong, let's look at what's right. And that's when they came up with the character strength language. Mark Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania, God bless his soul, he's the father of positive psychology. He was sick and tired of looking at pathology. He was sick and tired of looking at the DSM-5 and saying, why are we always looking for what's wrong, what's impaired? What's really going to move people forward is what's right. And, that's the philosophy we've had from day one, Len. That doesn't mean, just like you said, we don't help them understand, because ADHD is very situational. And if you don't understand the situations, you can get yourself in trouble. But what you said, I think, is crucial. And that's why we at the Academy created all the models that we use to take that complexity out of it and just put it in simple language. So when a kid can explain to his father, Dad, my brain wiring works different, there's nothing wrong with me, I'm just not going to do it the standard way everybody else does.
Right.
And that's so critical and so essential.
It is. And it's true for adults as well as it is for children,
yes,
right? When
absolutely.
When a wife can advocate for herself to her husband, or a husband can explain to a wife that this is what works for me and this is why, or, a professional to his team. I mean, it goes, it
all the
hits
way.
Everybody. You've got to understand how your brain works, how you work best, what's important to you, to be able to put it in place for yourself, to be able to ask for what you need, to be able to give yourself what you need to be successul. And I get all carried away, and we could talk all day.
No. It's so true, Lynn. No, I really, let's piggyback off that. That's so important. If you look at down the continuum of age groups, look at kids and parents. If one of the parents doesn't understand the ADHD and the other does, you've got a problem.
Absolutely.
Because they're going to sabotage the kid. In a relationship, if the husband has ADHD and the wife doesn't, and he's forgetting to do things, and she doesn't understand the ADHD, it can lead to divorce. And oftentimes it does. And sometimes they get back together again once they understand what's going on. And at the workplace, if there's a deadline due, and they've got a creative guy, and the creative guy is terrific but can't get deadlines in because he needs support, then they fire the creative guy, and guess what happens? Their source of creativity goes down. They can't figure it out, and then finally they figure it out, and they hire him back and for more money and get him a virtual assistant, because they didn't understand how important this person was, but they didn't understand ADHD. And actually, the workplace is one of the worst places for understanding ADHD, because they're afraid to educate people about it, because nobody wants to admit they have it because of the repercussions. So this piece of education is critical not only for the person with ADHD, but the person who doesn't have it. I think, frankly, Lynn, we do a better job than anybody else in the world at educating our clients about ADHD.
I'm a little biased, but I would agree with that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm definitely biased. But think about it. We've got great physicians when we can find them. There's not enough of them. Of course, there's not enough coaches either. But so they do the diagnosis and they say, here's the medication. Go try it and call me back in a month. And the client doesn't even know what to look for. Then a therapist might work with them, and there's some great therapists, and they might work on some belief systems and frame of reference. And then they're thrown out into the world. Okay, now I got a diagnosis. I got to look at my meds, and I got belief systems I have to change and stories I have to change. How the hell do I navigate the world? Who's going to help me navigate that world? Who's going to help me understand the pill doesn't give me the skill? The pill puts me on a level playing field, and I don't even know what I do well. I don't even know where to look for. I don't even know how my ADHD gets in the way. And that's what we do better than anybody else in the world. No one does what we do, Lynn. They may say they do it, but I know they don't. And we also take the theory and we put it to practical application, because what we care about is, again, activating the brain and having those people sustain momentum so that they can manifest those things in life that are really identify who they are, the essence of who they are. Not their reputation, not their performance. It's their character and their presence, and all those things that are natural for them, like being kind, being socially intelligent. And unfortunately, I got to tell you, Lynn, one of the biggest challenges is even when you present it to your client, they don't believe you in the beginning. You got to reinforce it over and over again with evidence. Yep. Don't you find that to be true?
Absolutely. We've got to undo what I always call, historical evidence, experiential evidence. We've got to help them undo some of what comes from that and start to experience some new successes and some new things that they can hold on to give them hope and to let them believe in themselves again.
Yeah. And if there's one thing that I can leave this call, leaving a gift for everybody in this call listening, Lynn, by the way, you're a terrific interviewer. I had to say that. Is starting to keep track of those moments in your life where you had success, where you had fulfillment, where you had joy, and were the essence of who you are. And keep them in a success diary or keep them in a file, because as sure as I'm sitting here, ADHD people have a tendency to hyper-focus on the negative, and that can lead to rumination. It can lead to the amygdala hijack where your emotions are flooded. And let me tell you what happens when you go to that book of success diaries. If you know where you keep it, and you always keep it in the place that's accessible, the moment you start reading those memories, which are full of positive emotion, even though the event has died, the emotion, the energy that went into, the spirit that went into those events are eternal and internal. Absolutely. They're always there. And I've had people after 50 years of having forgotten this memory go to that book and read that, what we call magnificent me moments.
Right.
And they go and they start reading it, and you can literally hear the change in emotion when they go read it, because this is a knowing. This is an experience that they know. It's not a belief. And so this is very important. And I would also encourage all of you to go take a free profile at the viacharacter.org, and also visit our site. We've got a great blog with lots of great information, free content, the Academy, which is ADDCA.com. And, we've got a lot of freebies on there. I also do a free intro where I give an overview of some of the philosophy that we've talked about. And, by the way, you don't have to come to the Academy to become a coach. We have a lot of people that just take the first 2 classes just for their own education, and they've said it's transformed their lives. Because then now it's exactly like you said, Lynn. Now they understand their ADHD, and they can go explain it to others, to their bosses, to their relatives, and they don't feel beaten up anymore. So lots of ways to learn.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for being here today. This is so much fun for me. It's an honor to have you here. I could listen to you and talk with you all day long. I know it's been great for me, but I know it's been great for our listeners too.
Well, the feeling is mutual, and I thank everybody who's listened to us. Lynn, keep doing the great work you're doing. I love that you have this program. People need to be educated, and what a wonderful way to do it. And have a great day, continued success, and I know we'll be in touch.
Thank you. Thank you so much, David. And thanks again to all of you for listening to ADHD Support Talk. As always, I appreciate your attention. Bye-bye.